Welcome to Strings and Pages. This is the Rings of Hydra, Great Escape, Chapter 2. The sun was just beginning to crest over the Pacific horizon, illuminating a scene of domestic terror. "Don't look at them," David said as he held Melinda in his arms. He also did his best to avoid staring at the group of former protesters now lying dirty on the solar road, the spot many of them had taken their last breaths. Fires still burned inside many of the cubes, still smoking into the pre-dawn air. Meanwhile, the GAD were still present in force, their jets now littering the open space between the smoldering rows of homes. "Over here," the soldier said, directing the Hagans to his side away from the flames. "Line up along the wall facing me." The Hagans agreed. Both David's family and his brother Joe stood facing outwards, Melinda holding Brian tighter than ever. It was a tense moment, since there was no way of proving they had nothing to do with the recent uproar. The soldier started with Melinda. He took her chin gently, held her face to his visor so he could scan her eyes. After a moment of silence, he said, "Melinda Hagan of 1200 Block, Southern Quadrant, D10. Then he turned to look at where the address was, pretty much right behind them and smoking away. He looked now to the baby. "Is he registered with the domain?" "No, sir," Melinda stated. "Not yet. We were just—" The soldier held up his hand to say it was okay before stepping down to David for a scan, followed by Joe Hagan. "Are you with the Feed Us Now organization?" he asked Joe, after seeing his address was different than the rest of the company. "No, sir," Joe said. "I work for my keep. My brother and I are Class B workers, miners. I live just down the row." He wasn't sure if his answer was heard, as the soldier appeared to be mumbling something to his helmet. Not long after, another one arrived. He wore a similar suit, an enforcer's gel suit, only this one a bit more colorful with some different symbols on his collar. "Lieutenant," the first one said as he arrived, "I've got a family here." "With the fun party?" the lieutenant asked. "I don't believe so." He gestured to the baby. "These are genuine displacements. I just sent you their pedigrees." The senior soldier's head went back and forth as he read the images scrolling across his vision. "David, Melinda, and Joseph Hagan," he said. "And Brian," Melinda added, prompting a slight pinch of her waist by David. The lieutenant didn't seem fazed by it, though. He turned and looked at the burning cubes, then back to the group. "Well," he said, "I don't think you'll be sleeping in there tonight. And with the little one, I wouldn't feel right telling you to sleep in this alley either." Then he muttered something that sounded like, "Though I bet there'll be a few that end up doing so." "What will you do with us?" Melinda asked. David scolded. It wasn't the right time to start asking questions. "It's okay, Mr. Hagan," the lieutenant said. "Can't blame a mother for being protective. It's only natural." "Yes, sir," David said. "Thank you. Thank you, sir." "To be honest, I'm not completely sure where you'll end up going, only where you'll begin. Administrative housing. There's a bit of a residential zoning shortage, along with everything else shortage on this ring, but I'm sure we'll find something." "Thank you, sir," the three Hagans said in unison. "Oh," the lieutenant said, turning back to them. "I can't promise you'll all be in the same cube, but again, see what we can do." "Of course," Joe said, as the senior soldier walked away. He didn't want to be in the same cube anyway, if he had any say in the matter. The first GAD soldier took over once again, a bit chipper this time. "Okay then," he said. "Let's get this show in the air." The Hagans sat in the back of a transport jet with a few other strangers. Everyone other than Joe and David clinging to the seats for dear life. Clearly, they were the only two who had ever flown anywhere before, for work or otherwise. As scary as it was, the view was breathtaking. "I can't even think about where we're headed right now," Melinda said nervously. "I just can't get over this view." She had passed Brian to David, and it was now glued to the little window this model jet had to offer the passengers. "It looks like another world from up here." The jet cruised north into the thick of the second ring. The edge was too far away to see, which David knew was disappointing, as the ring wall and the drop into the ocean was the real breathtaker. It was all the same, though, as Melinda had never seen her home ring from this view. David had, and he knew he wasn't missing much. The tallest structures on the second ring were only roughly 10 cubes tall, and even these were rare. Most of the landscape below consisted of clusters that were, on average, 3 or 4 cubes high. The solar roads were mostly laid out in a boring grid pattern, only occasionally breaking off into her horizontal or zigzagging directions. From the sky, the teal road, covered in windswept waves of soot, looked like the surface of some old dirty lake rather than the main mode of power-producing transportation that it was. Buses hovered slowly across the roads, carrying loads of sad passengers from one droll location to another in search of credits and food. The occasional smaller, personal hovercraft weaved its way through the buses, though there were fewer of them as they cost more. Some areas of the ring were clearly depressing, while others were hard to see at all, with the patches of smog thick and gray and wafting in the Pacific breeze. These smoky clouds produced a smoke screen which, over time, would absorb enough salty moisture to condense and settle over everything. The smokestack scattered everywhere only kept producing more. Where the Hagans were headed was a mystery. Hopefully a new place to rest their heads, even if only temporary. David feared, however, that regardless of where this place was, as long as they were staying on the second ring, it wouldn't be anything to get excited about. He looked into his son's bright, cheery eyes with a looming sadness in his own. "See anything wild down there?" he asked, trying to break out of this funk. Melinda looked back for a moment to answer. "An endless number of cubes," she said. "I had no idea the ring was so huge." Melinda was right about that. The ring was enormous. They all were. David didn't know how many people lived on his home ring, but he knew the number was in the millions. Wilder still, there were 8 more rings included in the center capital, bringing the likely total population of the Western Hydra ring system into the billions. It was hard to fathom. David glanced briefly out the window and began to feel very insignificant. Everyone in this passenger jet was just a tiny cog in an infinitely large wheel. "Please sit down, ma'am," a voice said. David hadn't noticed the enforcer. The same GAD soldier who had found and scanned them earlier had entered the back of the jet. He was so focused on Brian that he hadn't seen Melinda move from her seat to get a better look out the window. The last thing he wanted was more negative attention from the GAD. Surprisingly, the enforcer's tone was upbeat. "I just don't want you to fall if we hit any turbulence," he said. Melinda sat quietly, embarrassed. "Oh, of course," she said. "In case there's any what?" "Bumps," David said, handing Brian back to his mother. Then he turned to the enforcer. "Thank you for being so kind to us, and thank you for helping us when you did. I know that could have gone another way." The enforcer looked around before taking his helmet from his head. After removing the mirror finish from his face, the Hagans now saw the man's dark complexion, his warm eyes, a squared jaw, and a stiff smile that showed a level of understanding. He seemed noble on both interactions so far, and it seemed that he genuinely cared. His affability was a pleasant surprise against his position. "Evans," he said, reaching out to David. "Evans," repeated with a smile. "It's a pleasure, sir. I'd say David Hagen, but you already know that much." Evans smiled and leaned against the wall of the jet with his helmet tucked under his arm. "Yeah," he said, "I guess I do. I want you people to know that I feel bad about what happened to your homes." "Thank you for that," Joe said from a seat away. "Not that it was any of your fault." Evans nodded. "No, you're welcome. I also want you to know that I'm going to do whatever I can for you. The domain has a lot of resources, so much so that it can be hard to know what's available and what's taken. Most situations like these, and by these I mean when families are displaced due to natural causes or man-made disturbances like we had earlier, end up in a blizzard of bureaucracy and red tape. Often those people end up being worse off than they were before. I don't want that to happen to you." David looked at Joe, then back to Evans. "Don't take this the wrong way, Evans, because we appreciate that greatly, but I must ask, why are you taking such an interest in us?" He glanced at another family in the back of the jet that had a child a few years older than Brian. "Clearly we aren't the only ones with needs." Evan looked at the ceiling and parsed his lips. "I'll tell you why, Mr. Hagen. Please call me Dave." "Okay, Dave. I saw you bash and tear your way through that crowd. You had a club. You were formidable. I honestly was apprehensive approaching you in the alley. I don't think that you were aware I saw you scramble in there like you did, and what I saw was purely self-defense given the circumstances. When I called you out, you showed me respect. You obeyed my requests. You left your weapon behind. I know, I went back and took it so no one else would find it. And I thought to myself, this guy has the capability to become a ravenous animal if it comes down to life or death for his family, and yet he's able to turn it off like a switch. He knows his place." Evans moved his helmet to the other arm and placed the first one on the butt of his pulse rifle strapped to his thigh. "I don't know, Dave," he said. "Let's just say there's something about you I admire. And I know you weren't with the mob. Your actions prove it. I can't go and say that we're suddenly friends, but I can say I feel better knowing I did whatever I could to make sure y'all land on your feet." "I don't know what to say," Melinda said, bouncing Brian gently on her shoulder. "Either do I," David added. "You don't have to say anything at all," Evans said. "And with that, it's time I make my rounds and head back to the cockpit. Don't worry too much if you can help it. We'll be in the capital in no time." From where the Hagens were picked up from their burning homes, the flight to the Second Ring's capital district took about 2 hours. Meeting Evans was the highlight for David, as it would have been for Melinda too, if not for what the window had to offer. As a minor of an exchange as it was, it felt like a relationship had been established that could bear fruit in the future. He only hoped he'd get another chance to spend more time with the mystery, kind soldier. David was on good terms with most of the enforcers he worked under when he was on land, and this was great, only it was different than knowing one who worked at home on the ring. The ones on land were friendly enough, but they were there to work, always making sure no one was planning on running off into the woods. David knew a few enforcers by name at work, some better than others, but not at home, at least not until now. Crossing into Capital airspace offered a different view. Things looked cleaner, with less soot on the ground and buildings. The effort made to keep it this way was evident. Additionally, there was finally something to see other than cubes. Giant rounded columns twisting upwards into the clouds, dome tops, long archways, even colorful walls and roofs. Seeing the capital area district was like coming out of a black and white dream into real life. "David, where are we headed?" Melinda asked, bewildered. "I don't know, dear," he answered. "It looks that way, although we might be flying right over it." "One can hope," Joe added, "but you're probably right about flying right over it." The answer came in the form of a A wave of collective excitement. A noticeable increase in volume as the other families oohed and awed as the jet lowered altitude inside the Capital District perimeter. They were certainly touching down inside this colorful and clearly powerful section of the ring. "Please stay seated until we've landed," a voice said over the intercom. It was Evans, and just hearing his voice brought a smile to David's face. The jet touched down, and the bay doors opened from the back of the jet. "Okay, everyone," the voice said again. "Please grab all of your people and belongings and line up outside." All rose and walked down the ramp into the teal tarmac. This one, the cleanest, shiniest one they'd ever seen. It gleamed to the point they could even look at it without squinting. The Hagans lined up, as asked, and looked around. The tarmac was large enough to where lines of other jets could be seen in the distance. Even if they wanted to run, it was clear they were trapped by the expansive void surrounding them. They didn't want to run, though, as they were hopeful something good was coming their way. This was the hope, at least. Two enforcers appeared from around the nose of the craft, Evans holding a glass tablet and another a pulse rifle. "Okay, Evans said, "Listen for your names. Felice?" 3 people raised their hands, 2 adults and a young girl. "McDermott?" Another couple acknowledged the call. "Smith family. Is that your real name?" "I'm just joking. I see you folks." "And the Hagen family." Evans looked up for a quick glance and back to his glass. "Good. Everyone's here." He tucked the glass under his arm and then said, "So here's what'll happen today. We will be taking a bus from here to another location, an administrative building here in the capital, from where you will first be fed." There came another gasp and some clapping. "And then you will spend some time, perhaps an evening, I can't be sure, until you're finally placed into another cube." Hearing no arguments, rather some thanks, Evan summoned the bus. A lengthy vessel arrived, silently, floated to a stop, then settled gently on the tarmac. The door opened and the families were led aboard, where, unlike the crowded jet, there was more than enough space. The 2 enforcers were the last to climb in before the bus came back to life, ascended from the road, then pulled away from the jet. Once again, the families were eager to gaze outside. Compared to flying overhead, the Capital District looked so much bigger from the inside. The colors were more intense as well. Large screens produced obnoxious advertisements for exotic foods and lavish clothing from the sides of the tall buildings as they passed. Multicolored lights flashed down the sides of the roads where pedestrians strolled by rows of potted trees and shrubs, while countless shops lined the main avenue the bus hovered down. None of these families aboard had ever seen anything quite like this place. For them, it was a collection of ritzy places they didn't belong, selling things they couldn't afford. The bus finally reached the end of the strip, then made several more turns deeper into the Capital District before finally entering a yard full of larger, nondescript structures. It wasn't as exciting as what they had just passed, though not dreadful either. The bus pulled up to a large entryway and stopped, and just like before, everyone exited. The groups of families wandered into the administrative complex like lost children at an amusement park. There was so much to look at, and yet they felt out of place. Most people here were well-dressed, moving about their business as if they knew where they were headed. This very large complex housed the Hovering Vehicle Commission, the Division of Credit Taxation and Distribution, and the Fisheries Licensing Division, among other things. Not that the Hagans knew much about any of these either. They were simply told to go to the end of the structure where a large sign read, housing and scan in there. This is where they stood now, and they were far from alone. Many families gathered around the entrance to the housing complex. Unlike the children of the affluent families across the arena who jumped and skipped around the hall like wild animals, the children in the housing center were quietly huddled with their parents. For these folks, this wasn't an outing to wrap up some errands. This was a life or death appointment. The administrative end was silent and full of long faces. Melinda sat against the wall with Brian while David and Joe made their way through the line. Now they stood in front of a booth, conversing with something not human. "Please look closely into the eye port," the wall said, a green line buzzing up and down in time with its strangely optimistic male voice. David went first, placed his face up to the rubber outline where his eyes fit snugly. "Thank you, Mr. Hagen," the wall said. "Is your wife, Melinda Hagen, with you today?" "Yes," David said flatly, unimpressed with the fact he had to deal with an AI. "Perfect," the wall said cheerfully. "Is there anyone else you would like to add to your party?" "Yes, my infant son, Brian Hagen." "Congratulations, big fella," the wall said, prompting an odd glance between Joe and himself. Then the wall asked, "How old is little Brian now?" He's a year and a half." "Wonderful. Brian has been added to your party. Is there anyone else?" Another glance. "Yes, my brother Joe. He's right here." "Okay," the wall said. "Hello, Joe. Please step forward and let me get a look at those irises." "This is ridiculous," David said under his breath as he stepped aside, allowing Joe to hold his eyes to the mask. "Very good, Mr. Joseph Hagen. You are added. Is there anyone else?" Joe stepped aside to allow his brother the pleasure once again. "No, that is my entire family," David said. "What a jolly bunch," the wall said. "I see that you are both registered as Class B workers. Impressive. We are currently accepting sewer workers here in the Capital District. You have both been added to the roster. Details will be sent to your home portal, and your shifts will begin at 06 hours on Monday morning. Congratulations." A third glance. "We are looking for mining work," David said. "Actually, we are already registered." "I'm sorry," the wall interrupted. "Your old positions have been terminated as of 6 seconds ago. You are now registered sewer workers. Details have been sent to your portal, and your shifts will begin at 0600 hours on Monday." "I heard you," David said, throwing his arms in the air. He looked at Joe. "Unbelievable." Joe shrugged. I don't know either," David said, showing the first real signs of his frustration since his home had been destroyed in the middle of the last night. "Look, I don't know what to call you," David said, attempting at another plead. "My name is Wall," the wall said. Joe actually lost it, began cracking up, partly from exhaustion, the rest from the situation. David was still miffed. "Yeah, Wall. Listen, Wall. I've just had my home burnt to the ground, then my family and I almost trampled to death by the same mob of pyros. I was brought here." This is when it hit him. The beggars can't be choosers. David wasn't a rich man. If he were, he could just buy a new cube, a larger one, and probably do what he wanted for a living. Instead, sewer worker it was. It started at 0600 hours on Monday morning, and yes, the details were sent to his portal? "Yeah," he said. "Okay, Wall. What do we do next?" "Go around back to the left and grab a bite to eat," the wall said. "The rest will become evident." "Have a nice day, David." The Great Escape, Chapter 2. Thank you for your time and your imagination. Please Like and subscribe to be notified when Chapter 3 comes out. Love you. See you on the page.
KPSBooks.net